Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and whenever I'm in this part of the galaxy, I listen to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Makes flying a little more tolerable. Don't tell Anakin.
Hello, and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And this episode features discussion of some recent Star Wars news. But before we get into the latest, Jay, please remind everyone where they can find us on our social media pages and elsewhere online.
Absolutely, Dennis. We are very conveniently and easily found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The digital line, the signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. May the Schwartz be with you. And we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. You'll figure out what that means in a minute. Okay. So up first, we have some news about the upcoming Star Wars Starfighter movie. They'll be featuring Ryan Gosling. And that is that Mia Goth has been cast in a role opposite him. This is according to the Hollywood Reporter and other industry rags. Of course, Starfighter is going to be directed by Sean Levy, and it's arriving in theaters on May 28th, 2027. But she, okay, I'm going to give a spoiler warning here because all the reports on this kind of give away maybe bits of the plot on this movie. So if you don't want to know anything this far in advance, I'm sure all this stuff will come out well in advance of the movie hitting theaters, but you've been warned. Skip ahead 5-10 minutes. So anyways, she's going to be playing apparently is reported to be playing one of the villains, and she is going to be pursuing Ryan Gosling as he's protecting a young charge against evil pursuers. So yeah, okay, Jay, I have to fess up. Prior to reading this, I didn't really know that much about Mia Goth. But she's previously appeared in Maxine, Infinity Pool, Pearl, X, and The House. Do you know much about her? I mean, more than I did.
No, honestly, I know nothing about her. So, and honestly, none of these movies or works even, ring a bell to me. So, kind of cool though that we're getting very new types of personalities to come into Star Wars, very fresh, at least from my perspective. So, yeah, I don't know her.
Like I said, I don't really know much about her. I mean, then she's been cast in this, and then I looked it up. I mean, cool name, Mia Goth. Okay. But the other thing is here, the synopsis that I just talked about. Ryan Gosling is protecting a young charge against evil pursuers. Has that not been the synopsis of like 3/4 of the Star Wars projects in the past 5 years?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Whether it be, Skeleton Crew or The Mandalorian and Grogu, or
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Kenobi, yes.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, I really hope that they are able to put a fresh spin on a used idea because, you're absolutely right that it's becoming a trope with Star Wars in and of itself. So I hope that they can do it justice. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't want to condemn a movie before I've seen it. And we don't even know for certain that this is right. But I hope there's more to it than that when it comes down to it. Because, again, it's just like there's other plot lines you could be pursuing Star Wars on this. I can't remember how many news episodes ago it was where you and I were discussing the possibility that Star Wars Starfighter does not mean this is about a New Republic pilot doing things, that, Starfighter might be his last name in this regard. And so this report kind of makes me think maybe we were right about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope it's just not trying to cash in on the cute, if you know what I mean. It's like,
Right.
that's again, cute's always been part of Star Wars, whether it's Ewoks or Grogu or, Piggott. There's been, porgs and the like. There's always been some element of that around, and that's fine. They can do all that all they want. But there's other stories to tell. The other thing that I've been hearing is, again, this is a post the Rise of Skywalker movie, and we are waiting on the new Jedi Order. So is Ryan Gosling potentially escorting a young charge to Rey and her new Jedi Order for training?
Oh, perhaps.
Yeah. What do you think about
Yeah,
that possibility?
that's a pretty good guess, honestly,
Yeah.
especially if they're trying to tie those threads together.
Yeah. I don't know. It's the look. I trust in Sean Levy. Ryan Gosling's a fantastic actor. He's done some great projects lately. Sean Levy's done some great things as well. I mean, he's living high off of what he was managed to do with Deadpool and Wolverine and the
Mhm.
like. So I don't want to get down on this, but I hope, like I said, I just hope there's more to this movie than, you know, Grogu Redux. I mean, when it
Right.
comes down to it, here
No, I
we've seen
agree.
that. It's I know that's one of the reasons why Obi-Wan Kenobi got delayed just a little bit, because they were concerned about similar themes between that and the Mandalorian. But here they go with this movie. So anyway, it's just an interesting thing. What I'm curious about is who these evil pursuers might be. In the Mandalorian, of course, we had Moff Gideon, who wanted to study Grogu so that he could study his blood and use it to create his force sensitive clones that
Mhm.
would then revitalize the Empire. Here, if we're 15 years after the Rise of Skywalker, if we get the new Jedi Order, and this is someplace in between,
Mhm.
what possibly might these people be interested in a young charge for? There are
Mhm.
possibilities there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, the only things that I'm thinking as you're talking about this too is when you were talking about taking someone to Ray for the new Jedi Order. One of the things that they've said about this movie is that it is a standalone movie, that it's
Mhm,
not supposed to have anything to do with the Skywalker saga. So, and I knew that I know the Ray movie is different. It's not technically part of the Skywalker saga. So there is that. But
mhm,
then the other thing that I thought about too is that, obviously we've been introduced to more nefarious threats, if you will, in Star Wars than what we have come to know, especially going back into, the High Republic with the Nihil. So this could be a whole new breed of villains, baddies kind of a thing. Or, I'm thinking maybe it could even be the remnants of the Knights of Ren, trying to restart or continue or whatever, or some sort of Sith acolyte, type, not to use the word acolyte, in that same context as the Acolyte series, but I'm just saying, those that worship the same, types of usage of the Force as the Sith, but not our Sith, obviously. So, there's a couple of just spitball ideas that could potentially be. It could, also be maybe a form of, futuristic Night Sister type thing. I mean, who knows?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think we're due to find out what's going on with the Night Sisters in season 2 of Ahsoka, and that could spill
Mhm.
over into the future from there. I like all your ideas there. If we're going to have the rise of a new Jedi Order, then we have to have something to counteract them. That's
Right.
just been the way it's been with in any movie where the Jedi have been featured. There's been someone with a lightsaber for them to have a lightsaber fight with.
Yeah.
Of course, Rogue One was not about the Jedi, but we still had Darth Vader showing up in that one to slaughter rebels. Solo, a Star Wars story. 99% of that movie didn't feature any lightsabers, and it wasn't until we got to the end and we got a little scene with Darth Maul showing up in there. But if this movie is going to have some sort of a charge, and again, this is massive speculation on my part here, where this might be something where we're delivering a young force sensitive to Rey for potential training, then we need to start getting the first hints of a new dark side force cult. I mean, I think I'd be a little disappointed if it was the Sith King Bat, because they were so thoroughly obliterated at the end of The Rise of Skywalker. And there's so much Legends fiction that deals with other Sith cults that have come up that, I mean, okay, I could be convinced if there was a new Sith faction out there, but just how much that they've relied on the rule of two for so long, give us somebody else, give us a new
Mhm.
dark side cult.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
absolutely, and that's what I'm saying, like, there could be something completely new, kind of
mhm.
like, in the future as we were introduced to the Nihil in the past.
Right. Right. All right. Well, put a pin in that and we'll keep an eye on it. So let's get on with some other news. And that is that Andy Serkis has been asked about season 2 of Andor, as with every person who appears in Star Wars, and you're going to get asked about it no matter what you're promoting. And so he had an interview with Steve Weintraub of Collider while he was promoting Animal Farm. And he was asked specifically about Kino Loy not appearing in season 2 of Andor. His response to that was, I ultimately think it's best for the character. It was such a great arc and it had a very, very definite and heroic conclusion. I think in many ways to go back would be difficult because it has left a mark. I was so surprised at how emotionally effective that character was, actually. And so I think it's way, way better that we leave him in Narkina 5 on his own. So he had a few other comments about Andor that comes after that. But what's your reaction to his thoughts on Kino Loy's fate in season 1 of Andor?
Oh, bravo. I mean, he's absolutely spot on. I mean, as much as we had loved to speculate, oh, did he make it? Did he actually know how to swim? Did he get out? Are we going to see him again? I think it was a wonderful decision, not to recycle his character because I mean, sometimes you just have to put the lid on things. And I think
Right.
that's one of the things that Andor actually did really well is that it wasn't afraid to, put an end to things. I mean, we saw Bix we leave, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that was something that we knew we might see, but how we were going to see that we didn't know. Like, we speculated that is she going to die? Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And ultimately, there's a conclusion to his story and this was it. And that was a good one. And I think it's great that Andy Serkis is on board with that and supports that because I agree.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. If you're going to bring him back, it has to be because you have another story that has to be told with that
Mhm.
character. And if
Mhm.
you don't, it can't just be that he fought with a rebellion. There has to be something about that that is undeniable. And what would that be on this case? I mean, in order to put aside the impact that his fate appeared to be in season 1 of Andor, it just has to be that good. And
Mhm.
that's not to say that some clever writer couldn't come up with something that isn't that good, but I mean, that's such a huge, huge thing to overcome. I don't know what would
Right.
possibly be.
Yeah. We don't need a somehow Kino Loy
Right.
returned kind of thing.
Yeah, just showing up
For
in Yavin
sure.
4 and giving Cassian a high five. It's like, good to see you.
Right,
Let's go fight some
exactly.
stormtroopers.
He's over there wrenching on BB-8 or something.
Right. Yeah. But he was asked about season 2 of Andor, which he hasn't seen yet. And his response to that was, well, is it more of a masterpiece than season 1? And so I love that, how
That's
proud he
great.
was of his performance of
Mhm.
season 1. But then he's gone on to talk about how the response to his role as Kino Loy. And he said, he's been doing a lot of conventions. And he says, this year he's done a bunch of conventions and everyone wants to talk about Andor. It's remarkable how much it's affected people, which is great. It's such a beautiful piece of writing, such a beautiful piece of conceit, such a beautiful conceit. Tony Gilroy and all the directors who worked on those episodes just cut something brilliant. Yeah, I mean,
Yep,
brilliantly said. I think that he sums it up nice over there.
oh, yeah, absolutely. And Andor is another one of those things that has been kind of rare as of late, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the whole of the fandom agreeing on how wonderful it is. Last time this happened was when The Mandalorian first debuted.
Right.
So, and obviously Andy Serkis is understanding that and he's seeing that,
Yeah.
recognizing it.
What's fun about a guy like Andy Serkis is like he could still come back to Star Wars in a completely different role.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we've had him as Supreme Leader, Snoke, and we've now had him as Kino Loy, and he could do other motion capture and be someone completely different. And
Sure. He could be
we'd
like
all buy
Star
into
Wars Schmeagol. Yeah.
it. Chasing down some legendary lightsaber.
There
My
you go.
precious. Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, we got one last story for this week's Star Wars news, and it is Star Wars adjacent. And I'm super excited for this. We've had the official announcement and teaser for Spaceballs 2. I'm behind because today they released a little bit of a teaser trailer, but all the stories that came with it said that this movie was announced last year. And I don't
Really?
remember ever seeing that. Do you?
I do not. It was not on my radar at all.
Okay. Well, today we got details, and it's coming from Amazon sometime in 2027. And it's going to apparently be appearing in theaters first before it goes to Prime. But Bill Pullman is returning as Lone Star. Rick Moranis is coming out of retirement to reprise his role as Dark Helmet.
Oh boy.
Mel Brooks, who's currently 98 years old,
Oh
will be
boy.
coming back as Yogurt.
What?
So, yeah, get those scenes filmed soon.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Definitely.
anyway, joining the cast will be Kiki Palmer. And if you don't know who she is, she's appeared in Nope. She's done a voice in Lightyear, and she did Peaches in the Ice Age movies. And the official description of this is, I love this, a non-prequel, non-reboot sequel, part 2, but with elements franchise expansion film.
That is a tongue twister.
Yeah, a little bit of word salad there, but it works. It will be directed by Josh Greenbaum, who's previously done Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. I am not familiar with that piece of work. The script was by Benji Samat, Dan Hernandez, and I love this, Josh Gad, who was
Oh
also
boy.
expected to appear in the movie. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on a Spaceballs sequel?
Oh my gosh. Well, you're gonna completely laugh at me, but I've never seen Spaceballs from start to finish.
Really?
I have seen bits and pieces. I know pretty much everything about it, but I have never sat down and watched it in one sitting. It's
Wow,
kind
okay.
of like, yeah, it's one of those things kind of like the holiday special. I didn't watch that until just a couple years ago when we did
Mhm.
that for the podcast as well. And I know it's a very big rite of passage for a lot of, Star Wars fans. And it's definitely one of those humorous takes, on Star Wars that we've actually been talking about. But yeah, I've never actually sat down and watched it. I need to do it. And I know we probably will end up doing it now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I know how much of a cult classic this is as far as a fan favorite of satire.
Mhm.
So, and I know how much people love it and how much it's revered with fans. So I really hope that this non-prequel, non-reboot sequel part 2 with Elements franchise expansion film really does it justice.
Yeah. Okay. So, Spaceballs is a science fiction space opera satire. Most of what it is satiring is, in fact, Star Wars. But
Mhm.
if you watch it, it hits a bunch of other franchises as well, as any good type of satire does. It is a movie that I got to see. It came out in 1987, so I would have been 12 or 13 at the time, and I remember seeing a lot. And we had this on video or recorded it off of HBO or something. I can't remember. And I watched it over and over and over again with my brothers and other friends. We really, really loved it. It is a fun, fun movie. So I was super excited to see this. And of course, Lone Star it starts off as a spoof on Han Solo, and then he's got some Luke Skywalker elements into him. Rick Moranis' Dark Helmet is obviously a spoof on Darth Vader.
Mhm.
There is President Scrooge, who is a Scroob, rather, who is kind of a Palpatine slash American politician satire. There's lots of great characters in this. Of course, some of the members of that original cast, John Candy, Joan Rivers, and the like, are no longer with us, so they'll have to work around them, recast them. We'll see what happens. I would not be terribly surprised if Josh Gad ended up playing a character similar to John Candy did, which was a spoof on Chewbacca, but he was really just the character's name was Barf. He was a Mog, part man,
Mhm.
part dog, because he's his own best friend. Was the way they did that in Spaceballs, and that's just. Could you not see Josh Gad doing something like that as well? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
that's right.
100%.
What I'm really looking forward to knowing Josh Gad's involvement is doing spoofs on all those little videos he did with Daisy Ridley, where he was pestering her about who
Oh,
is the Last
yeah.
Jedi when the Last Jedi was coming to theaters. I could see a lot of that type of stuff coming promotionally over the next couple of years for that.
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah, that would be great,
Yeah.
honestly.
But his involvement is got me just about as excited as anything going on with this. And yeah, we're definitely going to cover this in a future edition of Laugh It Up Fuzzball. And we're actually ready to record another edition of that pretty soon here.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you haven't seen it all the way through, I'll be really interested to get your take, because I don't want to overhype it, but it is one of the best pieces of Star Wars satire that's out there.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I've heard again, so much about it from different people, and I see so many cosplayers that do different characters and things like that. And from what I've seen, the little bits and pieces, it's a classic. I mean, there's a reason why people love it so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we've talked all around it, but we actually got a little bit of a teaser. Did you get a chance to watch this?
I did not, so I need to sit down and do that, but tell me all about it.
Well, it's not much. I mean, 'cause they've shot absolutely nothing for it. So what they do is they just do a cross between the blue lettering that is, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then the crawl. They just do it in that blue text type as opposed to the yellow text that we're familiar with. And then it's just talking about how 38 years ago there was only one Star Wars trilogy, then there was a prequel trilogy, then there was a sequel trilogy, then there was a prequel to the sequels, and then there was it's just going on like that. And there were 7 alien movies, 2 of which had predators, and then 8 predators. But make sure that you understand that there was 8 other Predator movies that did not have aliens, and then there was 8 Harry Potter movies. It's just going on and on and on and on and on. And then it says that there's going to be this new Spaceballs movie coming out in 2027. And then it cuts to a little clip with Mel Brooks. And he says, after 40 years, we asked, what do the fans want? And then he says, but instead, we're making this movie anyway. So,
That's great.
and at least, the tagline after that comes is the Schwartz Awakens in 2027. So yeah,
Awesome.
they have not said when. I am assuming it's going to be later in the year rather than earlier, so that it is not competing with the Starfighter movie that comes out in May and any potential re-release of A New Hope in theaters that year. So
Okay.
yeah, that would be my guess. A little bit of prognostication there. So
Yeah, no, I think that makes total sense. I'll tell
mhm.
you what though, I mean, what a living legend, Mel Brooks. I remember growing up watching like History of the World,
Yeah.
Robin Hood Men in Tights was another, Blazing Saddles,
Mhm.
all of those come to mind right away. But so
I am very surprised you've seen all those and not Spaceballs.
yeah. Yeah, my dad was all into a lot of satire like that. He was the one
Uh-huh.
that introduced me to Mel Brooks. But, um, but yeah, yeah. My dad he had a very quirky sense of humor, so
Yeah, well, that was a type of movie that really was um, at its height in the late 70s and 80s.
mm,
And it kind of faded out after that because, I'm thinking of the Naked Gun movies
mhm.
featuring Leslie Nielsen, Airplane, and the like, and whatever. And that type of like blatant satire has just disappeared for a very
Yeah.
long time. I mean, there was I can't remember what they were all called, but like another teenage movie or something like that. Those type of things that came out that were just not good at all, not even particularly funny, that came out for a while. But they were not like always the most expensive movies to make, but they always like returned on their investment there. Speaking of which, Naked Gun's getting a new movie featuring Liam Neeson. I don't know if you've seen that. It's
Oh,
coming out soon.
no.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
that's
he
cool.
plays Frank Drebin's son in that one, so I'm looking forward to that. But I'm kind of excited for this. This is such a, you and I are both Gen X, and these type of movies were a huge part of our childhood. and I'm really excited to see them come back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And like I
Yeah.
said, I just hope that they do it justice. I'm sure that they will, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's, when you revisit something like that, it can be, when like we talked about with things like Flash Gordon, you
Mhm.
look back on those and it's like, oh my gosh, but still good.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. But again, this is humor, this is comedy, this is satire, and it's not
Right.
taking itself seriously at all. So I'm hoping
Good
that
point.
makes the difference when it comes
Good
down to
point.
it. But
There
all
you
right.
go.
Well, there we go. That's this week's news. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Podcast Stardust as we work through it all. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you want to get our weekly take on what's going on in the galaxy far, far away, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. And once you've done that, we'd really appreciate your ratings and reviews if your podcatcher supports such things. And if not, head over to Apple Podcasts and take 30 seconds and leave us a review. We need some new ones, and we'd love to get them. And if you want to find more Podcast Stardust beyond what your podcatcher is going to carry, which is going to probably be about 100 to 200 episodes, head over to retrozap.com. We are on the verge of 900 episodes, and all of them are over there on RetroZap, along with some other great podcasts such as Agency Hill Case Files, Enemy Cast, Bruise and Blasters, Dork Lair, Doomcast, Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, Superhero Suite, and Warp Trails. Plus our last podcast, Starship Sabers and Scoundrels. It's there too.
Right.
Jay, you remind everybody where we can be found elsewhere on social media and across the internet.
Absolutely. So you can find all 800 plus episodes very conveniently if you follow all of our social medias, which is Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And you can also check us out on Pinterest for lots and lots of ideas for everything Star Wars. And then you can also get in touch with us through YouTube and YouTube Music, not only to listen to the podcast episodes, but also to leave reviews and interact with us as well. So let us know what you thought about these news stories and anything else that you hear here on the show. And then we also have our TeePublic link. So that is in our show notes, and you can hit that up for all things Podcast Stardust related. And so we have 7 different show logos available on everything from t-shirts and sweatshirts to coffee mugs and home goods. And every one of those purchases does help to support the show. So we would love to see it. And once again, the link to that is in our show notes.
All right. What's going on with cosplay this summer?
Right now, the cosplay front is a little quiet. So if you want to check out some of my past work and also all the things that I will be up to this summer as things start rolling around, you can check that out on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And you can catch me as Ahsoka, the fourth sister, 2 different versions of Hera, as well as my original concept Mandalorian, and much, much more. So once again, that's at j.snipscosplay on Instagram.
All right. Upcoming on the show on Monday, we are getting into part 2 of our discussion of Alexander Freed's Reign of Empire, Mask of Fear. And then on Wednesday, it is the next edition of World Between Worlds. So make sure you join us for all that. With all that having been said, thanks for listening to episode 899 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Schwartz and the Force be with you.